CPI inflation report update, October 13th, 2022. We're going to discuss September rate. As the Federal Reserve has released information, as information has been released this morning, today, that September rate hit 8.2%. Basically, inflation's holding its grip on the U.S. economy, which is good and bad when you look at it. Good that inflation is pretty much holding and not increasing, and bad that it's not decreasing. But I guess we are in somewhat of a pattern here of trending towards the right direction. Perhaps, maybe. It says here, according to NBC News, the annual U.S. inflation rate saw little change in September, hitting 8.2% year over year compared with August's 8.3%. And the pace of price increases remains at multi-decade highs, causing pain for many of U.S. households. Comment down below if you're one of the U.S. households who are feeling the pain from inflation. I know that we sure are, and it all kind of boils down to depending on what purchases you're looking to make, your income levels, your monthly budgets, your expenses, and particularly we're seeing it with food. We're seeing it with food and energy prices, but also there's inflation across the board, and it pretty much hits you from all angles. But with that being said, we continuously try to spend less, tighten our budgets, and make more money. High prices for food, shelter, and medical care sent the Consumer Price Index for September up by 0.4% compared to August 0.1%, according to data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics released this morning. But also, food isn't included in the CPI report, so I'm not even sure how this affected the CPI index because they're not supposed to include food because of its volatility. Inflation remains at the top of Americans' minds going into the last quarter of a year that has seen across the board volatility in food, gasoline, and energy prices. And this should be a concern for many because as we go into the last quarter of the year, especially for businesses who run their fiscal calendar in alignment with the traditional calendar, this is going to be your last chance to make money, bring in revenues, and ultimately close out the year in the black. Maybe a lot of companies will be in the red, which my fears immediately point towards companies ending 2022 in the red and employees and workers and Americans suffering the consequences of that early in 2023 with mass layoffs, as companies will more than likely not start the following year doing the same things they were doing the year before, losing money, especially as the first quarter, second quarter of the year may not be heavy hitters as far as revenue goes as we're rolling through winter. Last quarter, fourth quarter, 2022, we have a great opportunity with the holiday shopping season and money being spent. But like I told you guys before, I'm going to release a video very soon with an update on what businesses and what jobs are probably going to be best to survive this economic cycle. And it's really going to come down to businesses helping businesses. The more businesses help businesses, the more employees will remain. The more employees that remain, the more income that they'll generate, thus having the ability to spend in the economy. But prices are going to have to come down so that they can afford to buy. And this will slowly create this cycle of continuous circulation of money throughout the economy without the government's intervention of printing money and prices coming down. And, honestly, if we see the opposite, if we see the hyperinflation, if we see a deep recession, if we see a depression, that's going to pretty much bring this to a stop. And those who have, those with money, those at the higher, other opposite end of the wealth gap, they're just going to further increase that gap, wiping out the middle class. And it's just going to be a pretty dark time for a little while until, the folks with money start spending money again, which they're not going to spend like the average consumer would spend. So it would really be devastating for our overall economy, in my opinion. I'm not an economist. This is not financial advice. I'm just a guy sitting at a table with an artificial plant reading news and just sharing my thoughts. Now, while the Biden administration has sought to address the issue through measures like the Inflation Reduction Act, the provisions contained in that law are set to take effect over a period of 10 years. And at least two separate models predict its impact, or its actual impact on inflation would be statistically insignificant. And this is what we would call clickbait. The Inflation Reduction Act is not designed to reduce inflation. If anything, it's only designed to act like it's going to reduce inflation. So there you have it. So the burden of bringing a stubborn inflation rate sits on the doorstep of the Federal Reserve, unfortunately. Jerome Powell is pretty much steering that ship, and the central bank has already increased its benchmark rate 5 times this year, which included 3 consecutive 75 basis point or 0.75% hikes in order to make borrowing and spending money more expensive in order to cool off consumer demand. It's a little bit of a catch-22 with the consumer demand, and the demand is only an issue in the areas where supply is limited. But demand still exists across the board where there is an abundance. It's just that in food, in housing, in transportation, these are probably the most highly sought after and limited supply industries that continuously drive inflation. The housing market has seen the most immediate impact of the Fed rates raising scheme. At nearly 7%, mortgage rates are now at their highest levels in close to 2 decades, which has slowed home price growth in its tracks and in some cities caused prices to fall. But honestly, in my opinion, if you bought a house in the last 2 years and you've got a pretty decent interest rate, so what? Who cares what the Fed's doing? In my opinion, right now, I'm just not going to sell. So sure, this may have slowed price growth and pause sales and cause prices to fall. But all that means is that it's just going to prevent the sellers from selling. It's going to prevent the homeowners from listing. So I think that's going to be a little bit of a longer game plan to see any real results from that. Unfortunately, the Federal Reserve's goal is to slow the housing market, bring prices down, jack up interest rates, kill jobs, and make it so that Americans are forced to drive inflation down versus really trying to figure out what really causes this and ultimately improve supply. Because that's the flip side of the coin. It's like we can slow demand or we can increase supply. Novel idea. I want to read some comments to you guys from the actual boots on the ground, insider intel, in the trenches, daily. A lot of these you probably are going to resonate with. Maybe even one of these are your comments. But this one says here that as a founder only small business owner, I can confirm costs continue to rise. Not nearly as fast as a clip, but a gallon of automotive paint, body filler, sandpaper, and power tools have still seen plenty of price hikes in the last few months. And this comes down to supply. If the supply was increased, we would probably see a decrease in the inflation of price as the supply would further generate competition. And that's what we need more of, is competition, viable competition, healthy competition. That's what businesses thrive on. Businesses and consumers thrive on healthy competition. But this makes sense. And being in the automotive industry, paint, body filler, sandpaper, power tools, unfortunately, what happens is with these other inputs costing more, it just drives up the price of that. And it's just a continuous cycle. I don't necessarily think that the interest rates are really going to do it. They're just going to make it harder for people to survive and make it more expensive to borrow money and charge credit cards. Almost everything I bought at Walmart today went up 10 to 12% in the past 2 weeks. Not sure if they raised prices during certain periods, but everything seemed to be going up at once. And that's just a product of what's going on right now. I don't really see prices coming down anytime soon. And with that, businesses and companies like Walmart, they're going to continue to raise prices where they can. In this particular instance, that is, this one says everything, but I'm seeing it in the food, and it says everything I bought. So I don't know what they bought. They probably bought food, Because if you look at other departments, they have a surplus, and I bet those prices are not going up because they're just trying to move them and nobody wants to buy them. But with that being said, they're going to raise prices. They're going to cut jobs. Marketing budget almost entirely turned off because we are in a recession already. I would agree. For the most part, we are in a recession already. Maybe not widespread. Everybody's in a recession, but certain markets, certain industries, certain parts of the country are in a recession. Certain income brackets are definitely in a recession. And marketing budgets almost turned off here. That is alarming because marketing is what's theoretically more than likely going to drive business, drive sales, revenue, and profits. And if you cut your marketing, that's a tough one. Unfortunate, but true. And, if businesses are going that route, then the writing is on the wall. You may want to prepare for what is to come. My friend just told me he was fired 2 days ago, along with 400 other employees in one of the biggest solar companies. That worries me since solar has been booming through this recession. Everybody's going to feel the pain. Everybody's going to feel the pain until we can form a solution here and get things back on track. Ironically, solar, clean, green, renewable energy. But at the end of the day, depending on who these employees were, what their roles were, we still have the process of businesses evolving and replacing the workforce with AI, technology, robots, drones, automation. As a business owner, cost of supply is still very overinflated. Regular customers are spending less than usual. It has really slowed down in the food industry as everyone is either saving for the massive dip everyone keeps talking about or just don't have any more money. Last month, I had to actually dig into my investments because quota wasn't met. This month doesn't look so good either. May have to start laying off. This is, hopefully, if this is the case, maybe you're having these conversations with your employees so you don't blindside them and catch them by surprise with a shocking layoff. But this is real. Now, fortunately, you had the investments. I hope maybe the investments mean retained earnings. I'm not sure. But I'll say that the restaurant and the food industry is a little tough because the margins are already pretty thin. And then when you add in the higher prices of the food and the input costs and the employees and the overhead and all the other expenses that come along with restaurant ownership, not to mention any surprise expenses that will pop up, like possibly a mixer going down or a huge plumbing disaster or anything that could happen in a restaurant where there's so many moving parts, that could really take a toll on you. And now the worst part about it is typically businesses would borrow against low interest debt to keep things running and keep revenues and push profits. But now low interest loans and low interest credit, it's going by the wayside thanks to Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve. We're going through another wave of increases averaging 15 to 20% on raw materials and packaging. Some of the raw commodities may be going down, although I think that was transitory. But there are too many other components and factors contributing to even higher costs. We have not seen even a let up in the increase percentage amounts. I'm not sure what Care Labs is or what industry they're referring to exactly, but we are seeing an increase in raw materials and packaging. Like I said, we're seeing an increase across the board, mainly for the fact that the supply is limited. If we could increase the supply, we could theoretically see some increased competition in the market and see some prices coming down, increased competition, improved consumer confidence, more spending, more jobs, more money, and try to get this thing back on track. We just lost 2 mom and pop restaurants in my hometown. I want to know how Chinese buffets stay in business. They offer endless food and you never see them going out of business. LOL. That is kind of funny. I don't even really go to, I'm not going to say even really. I don't go to Chinese buffets. I don't even go to buffets really. But it is ironic because I've actually seen some open, which is kind of strange. So how are they doing it? I own my own HVAC business in Dallas, Texas, and business has been great for the last 2 years. But most people need third-party financing, and those rates are going up. and it's getting harder to get approved. We are almost recession proof and will be okay, but costs have gone up 65% in the last couple of years, so the consumer is paying a lot more. So it is starting to change and slow down. Smart people are cutting back on extra spending if they can. Absolutely. Budgeting. If you can't increase how much money you make, maybe you can decrease how much money you spend. And with that, it'll be more than likely in some luxuries, whereas HVAC is considered a luxury. You own your own business in Dallas, Texas, which is good because it's hot in Texas. So HVAC should be in the summertime booming. Last 2 years, most people need third-party financing. That is believable. But the rates going up and making it harder to get improved is going to be a long-term issue that you should be mindful of. You feel as though you're recession-proof, but I could probably bring you 3 possible scenarios that would prove otherwise. I hope that you will be okay, but don't let up and don't get too comfortable. Pay attention. Continuously learning, evolving, gaining more knowledge, and understanding not only the economy, but the customers is going to be vital. Not financial advice, I'm just speaking as a friend to a friend. But costs have gone up 65% in the last couple of years. And look, if costs are continuously going up, it's becoming more expensive to borrow money and harder to get approved. And you're saying that more people need third-party financing, then these are serious warning signs that you might want to be paying attention to. And, if they're already starting to change and slow down and people are cutting back, you may not be as recession-proof as you think. It ain't getting better for me. Paints and basic supplies are getting more expensive by the day, and manufactured boat parts are weeks, if not months out when I can find them. The boating industry, the marine industry, that one is a little bit of a struggle. Here down in Florida, we're on the water regularly, and we hear the constant complaints of parts, repairs, and just getting boats. And now as we move towards the winter, is the time that you want to be doing your maintenance, your retooling, bringing in new inventory and getting ready for the upcoming spring season, boating season, summer season. And if you can't get it, this is going to be it's going to hurt you if you're in the maintenance for this part this time. But it's also going to hurt you if you're in the charter industry, the leisure industry, the tourism industry, and you can't get the parts, you can't get the boats. That could be detrimental. Consumer credit cards will be maxed out by the end of Q4, assuming 2022 Q4. And although I agree with that, I don't think it's 100% true because my credit cards aren't going to be maxed out. So I don't want to make this a blanket statement, but a lot of folks are struggling and they are leaning towards using credit cards to bail them out with no real strategic plan on how to repay those debts. And if they max them out at the end of Q4, what are they going to do come 2023 Q1? Think about that. My girlfriend says she's watching prices at Target go up in real time. Month over month, food and clothes are noticeably up since last month. I'm rotating my index funds into shorts for the inflation report today. Wish me luck. Love the content, Kevin. Keeps me up to date on all things macroeconomics while I work my construction job. Well, I appreciate that. And yes, we're seeing prices go up in real time. I'm sure if maybe your girlfriend works at Target or she shops there regularly, she's probably seeing it too. And all I can say is don't get in over your head on these investments, especially on these options trading. That can be very dangerous. I worry that the companies who have a really cool vision are about to die horribly. And that is actually of a big concern, something that Michelle and I were talking about this morning on the podcast. And, these companies with really cool visions are not only going to be beneficial to us all in what they can create, what they can produce, and what they can bring, but more than likely, these companies with cool vision probably have a better idea on how to manage the relationships with the employees and create a work-life balance. And if they don't make it, then it puts us all at a disadvantage, just to be honest. My family owns a tree service and landscaping business. At the moment, we only cut lawns and small irrigation works. We purchased a $15,000 wood chipper and haven't even used it once. Now, hopefully you got that wood chipper at a discount at $15,000, and it may pay off for you in the future since you have it. Great tool to have. But unfortunately, you're already seeing a reduction in what your family business is doing, and now you're limited to just cutting grass and small irrigation work. So the writing is a little bit on the wall. And this is just in line with consumers cutting back and managing their money and choosing to forego certain luxuries for the sake of inflation and just maximizing every dollar that they have. I encourage you all to, if you are in a somewhat of a situation financially where you're barely keeping your head above water, living paycheck to paycheck, possibly one paycheck away from being homeless, that you maybe consider looking at your budget. But for anybody else, including those folks, everybody, finding ways to increase your income, introduce multiple streams of income, and produce passive income streams or start small businesses or side hustles, as always, I definitely would say check those out. They do exist. The opportunities are there. And if you guys got any questions, want to know any more about it, hit me up. My info's in the description. You can join the group where we discuss heavily YouTube content creation, more than likely moving over towards other social media platforms that are producing revenue, producing streams and monetization opportunities that we don't want to miss out on as we are in somewhat of the ground level of these phases. So pay attention. Check out this video here. It's going to be very helpful. This one too. Subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications, like, subscribe, share, comment. Have a great day. You guys be safe. I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye.